In the dead of night, when shadows stretch like grasping fingers across forgotten walls, whispers echo through the ages. What if the bloodthirsty monsters of our nightmares were not born from ink and imagination, but from flesh and bone? Real souls who walked among us craving the crimson tide of life itself. If these tales of eternal hunger stir something deep within you, hit that subscribe button now and drop a comment below. Who do you think was the most terrifying vampire in history? Let's uncover the darkness together. Long before the flickering glow of cinema screens brought vampires to life, their legends rooted themselves in the soil of history, drawing from the deeds of men and women whose savagery blurred the line between mortal and monster. We journey back to the misty realms of Eastern Europe, the opulent courts of Hungary and the humid underbelly of America's deep south. Places where the veil between the living and the undead thinned to a razor's edge. It is here in the 15th century and beyond that the first threads of these blood-soaked myths were woven not by fiction but by the unyielding grip of reality. The year was 1431. In the rugged mountains of Transylvania, a boy named Vlad was born into a world of endless war and treachery. His father, a nobleman entangled in the shadowy politics of the Order of the Dragon, a brotherhood sworn to protect Christianity from Ottoman invaders, named him after that very emblem. Vlad Dracula, son of the dragon. But dragons breathe fire. This son would drink blood. As the Ottoman Empire pressed against the borders of Wallachia, young Vlad's life unraveled in brutality. Captured at 11, he endured years of captivity in the Sultan's courts, where whispers say he learned the arts of cruelty that would define him. Released in 1448, he seized the throne of Wallachia only to lose it again in a whirlwind of betrayals. By 1456, Vlad reclaimed his power through a path paved with impalements, stakes driven through the bodies of thousands, their forms left to writhe against the sky like macabre forests. Imagine the scene. Fog-shrouded fields where the air hung heavy with the metallic tang of blood. Nobles who plotted against him, Saxon merchants who defied his rule, even entire villages suspected of disloyalty. Vlad spared none. Chroniclers from the time, horrified scribes in distant lands recorded how he dined amid these agonized spectacles, his eyes gleaming with a fervor that chilled the soul. One account speaks of a feast in his castle, where the table was set beneath a canopy of the dying, their groans a twisted symphony to his appetite. But was this mere tyranny, or something far more sinister? As tales spread across Europe, Vlad's reputation twisted into legend. Merchants fleeing his lands carried stories of a lord who did not merely kill, but feasted, draining the life from his victims in ways that defied natural explanation. In the 19th century, these fragments inspired Bram Stoker, who transformed Vlad into the elegant, immortal Count Dracula. Yet buried in the archives of history lie hints of the occult. Vlad's fascination with dark rituals, his unyielding health despite wounds that felled lesser men, and rumors from his own court that he sought elixirs from the blood of the pure to defy death itself. Transitioning from the impaler's grim throne to the gilded halls of a countess's domain, we find another figure whose legacy stains the pages of infamy with a deeper scarlet hue. Far to the west, in the Kingdom of Hungary, the late 16th century unfolded under the reign of Elizabeth Bathory. Born in 1560 to one of the most powerful families in Europe, Known as the Blood Countess, she was a woman of exquisite beauty, her porcelain skin and raven hair masking a heart as cold as winter's bite. Elizabeth's early life was one of privilege and peril. Married at 15 to a warlord twice her age, she managed vast estates while he campaigned. Servants whispered of her tempers, of punishments that escalated from slaps to something unspeakably vile. By 1600, as her husband lay dying, Elizabeth's isolation deepened. She surrounded herself with a cadre of loyal aides, women who shared her secrets and men who turned blind eyes for gold. The first disappearances were subtle. Peasant girls, lured from nearby villages with promises of work in the castle, vanished into the labyrinthine chambers of Chejte. Witnesses, surviving maids and terrified locals, later testified to horrors that curdled the blood. Elizabeth, they said, bathed in the vital essence of the young, believing it preserved her youth. Bathtub-sized vats filled with steaming crimson, her body submerged as screams echoed through the stone corridors. One account details how she lured a girl with a comb only to slash her throat and collect the flow, her laughter mingling with the gurgle of death. As the years wore on, the toll mounted. Hundreds, perhaps over 600 girls met their end in those shadowed halls. Elizabeth's methods evolved. Pins driven into flesh to heighten the yield, or slow exsanguination to savor the process. Her castle became a fortress of fear, where the night air carried the faint iron scent of spilled life. Nobles turned a blind eye, for the bathory name shielded her like armor. But cracks formed. A servant's escape in 1610 alerted authorities, and King Matthias himself ordered an investigation. Palatine Thurzo, a kinsman, stormed the castle on a frigid December night. What they found defied comprehension. Drained corpses in the cellars, torture instruments stained with evidence of prolonged agony, and Elizabeth herself, unrepentant, her skin unnaturally smooth amid the decay around her. Tried in secret to spare the family's honor, she was not executed but walled alive in her chambers, left to starve in darkness until her death in 1614. Yet even in confinement, legends bloomed. Was Elizabeth truly mortal? Or had she tapped into an ancient rite, a vampiric covenant that demanded virgin blood for eternal allure? Folk tales from the region speak of sightings after her entombment. A spectral woman haunting the forests, her thirst unquenched. Historians debate the numbers, the exaggerations, but the core remains. A real woman whose atrocities birthed the archetype of the seductive, blood-craving noblewoman, echoing through literature and lore. Now let us cross the ocean, where the humid nights of the New World birthed their own breed of undead whispers. It is the 19th century, and New Orleans pulses with a rhythm all its own. A melting pot of French elegance, African rhythms, and Creole mysticism. Beneath the gaslit streets and wrought iron balconies, a subculture thrived in the shadows. The vampires of the French Quarter, not fictional fiends but flesh and blood eccentrics whose nocturnal habits fueled rumors of the supernatural. The story begins in the 1850s amid the city's booming trade and hidden vices. John MacDonnell, an Irish immigrant turned restaurateur, opened a tavern on Royal Street. By day he served gumbo and absinthe to sailors and socialites. By night his establishment transformed. Patrons spoke of MacDonnell's pallid complexion, his aversion to sunlight, and a peculiar diet whispered to include more than oysters and red wine. In 1857, a scandal erupted when a young woman was found exsanguinated in an alley nearby, her throat marked with twin punctures, dismissed as animal attack, but locals knew better. As the tale spread, more figures emerged from the fog. The Carter brothers, John and Wayne, arrived in the 1930s, tall and gaunt, with eyes that seemed to pierce the soul. They claimed descent from ancient European bloodlines, living in a crumbling mansion on Esplanade Avenue. Witnesses, tour guides, jazz musicians, even police, described how the brothers hosted lavish so-called blood feasts, inviting the city's outcasts to partake in rituals that mimicked the undead. One account from a former servant recounts a midnight gathering where participants drank from crystal goblets laced with animal blood, chanting in forgotten tongues. The brothers enforced a code: no sunlight, no garlic, eternal night. But the real intrigue deepened in 1919 with the unsolved murder of a prostitute named Josie Arlington. Found in her brothel, drained to a husk, her death ignited a wave of panic. Newspapers dubbed it the work of real vampires, and soon underground societies formed. The Lafayette Cemetery became a nexus where figures like Marie Laveau's spiritual heirs blended voodoo with vampiric lore, performing ceremonies to summon or appease these nightwalkers. Consider the testimony of a 1920s detective haunted by the case, bodies piling up along the Mississippi levees, each paler than the last, puncture wounds hidden beneath high collars. The city's elite, it was said, covered it up. Mayors and magnates who frequented the same dens perhaps ensnared themselves. One shadowy group, the Sallies, a coven of women echoing Bathory's legacy, allegedly operated from a Bourbon Street attic, luring men with promises of ecstasy before the fatal bite. What connected these distant souls? Vlad in his Transylvanian lair, Elizabeth in her Hungarian fortress, the nocturnal prowlers of New Orleans. A thread of blood woven through centuries, suggesting that vampirism was no mere myth, but a dark inheritance passed from one real monster to the next. As we delve deeper, patterns emerge: an unnatural longevity, a compulsion toward the vain, and rituals that mocked mortality. But what if these were not isolated tyrants, but links in a chain stretching back to antiquity? Let us peel back the layers, starting with Vlad. Beyond the impalements, Ottoman records hint at his survival of poisons that should have felled him, his body regenerating from wounds in days. A Byzantine chronicler noted how he interrogated prisoners by slicing their veins, tasting their essence to discern loyalty, a practice too eerily vampiric to dismiss as mere sadism. And his end? In 1476, betrayed and beheaded, his head sent to Constantinople as a trophy. Yet legends persist that his body vanished, buried in a secret crypt where he awaits resurrection, fueled by the blood of the impure. Elizabeth's trial transcripts, though sealed, leaked fragments that chill. She claimed her beauty's preservation came from an ancient formula, inherited from a Transylvanian ancestor, perhaps a nod to Vlad's lineage. Servants testified to her nocturnal wanderings, returning with lips stained red, her victim's screams echoing like distant wolves. Post-mortem examinations, rare for the time, revealed no signs of aging in her corpse, fueling conspiracies that she had transcended death, her spirit migrating to new vessels across the seas. In New Orleans, the connections solidify. The Carter brothers boasted of European roots, displaying a locket said to contain Bathory's hair. A 1938 police raid on their home uncovered journals detailing blood migrations, families fleeing persecution in Hungary to the Americas carrying the curse. One entry described a ritual linking back to Vlad, impaling a symbolic stake during full moons to honor the dragon. And the murders. Forensic whispers from the era suggest anticoagulant traces in the wounds, as if the killers savored the slow drain, echoing the Countess's baths. As investigations into these figures deepened in the 20th century, modern eyes turned skeptical. Historians pored over Vlad's wars, deeming him a defender against invasion, his cruelties wartime necessities. Bathory's accusers, perhaps rivals fabricating charges to seize her lands. New Orleans vampires, eccentrics role-playing in a city of masquerades. But then, anomalies surface. DNA analyses of Bathory's remains show rare genetic markers linked to blood disorders. Porphyria, the vampire disease, causing light sensitivity and a craving for fluids. Vlad's skeleton, unearthed in 2014 near his fortress, bore scars inconsistent with known battles, as if healed unnaturally. Witness accounts persist too. A 1970s occultist in New Orleans claimed to have met a descendant of the Carters who revealed a map tracing bloodlines from Wallachia to Hungary to Louisiana, a diaspora of the damned. Newspapers from the 1890s Budapest reported sightings of bathory-like figures draining livestock, while Transylvanian villagers in the 1990s spoke of a man resembling Vlad, lurking in the Carpathians, his thirst awakened by modern chaos. But what if the truth is darker than anyone imagined? These real prototypes were not just inspired vampires, they were the originators, their acts imprinting on human psyche a collective memory of predation. Imagine a hidden order, the true order of the dragon, not Christian warriors, but guardians of an ancient thirst, selecting vessels like Vlad, Elizabeth, and the New Orleans shadows to perpetuate the legend and the reality. We approach the heart of the abyss now, where history's veil tears asunder. In 2005, during Hurricane Katrina's fury, New Orleans flooded streets unearthed a forgotten vault in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1. Inside, amid sodden bones, lay a journal bound in what tests later confirmed as human skin. Its author? A man calling himself the Link, chronicling his lineage. Born in 15th century Wallachia, schooled in Bathory's courts, arriving in the Crescent City by 1780. He described not metaphor but method, a transfusion ritual, blending victims' blood with one's own to steal vitality. The entries detailed encounters, advising Vlad on elixirs, bathing with Elizabeth in vats that preserved more than youth, guiding the Carters in their feasts. The climax came in 1910 when the Link orchestrated a convergence, a ritual in the bayous summoning essences from across time. Witnesses from the era, voodoo priests and dock workers, reported a night of crimson rain, figures rising from the muck, their eyes aglow with borrowed life. One passage chilled deepest. The blood remembers. It calls its own. In the chaos of storms, we awaken fully, no longer bound by graves or guillotines. This revelation twisted everything. Vlad's decapitation? A ruse. His essence fled to Hungary. Bathory's entombment? A slumber. Her spirit ferried westward. The New Orleans vampires? Modern inheritors, their murders offerings to sustain the chain. Forensic echoes supported it. Unexplained blood residues in Bathory's castle matching rare types found in Katrina victims. A 2018 genetic study linked Wallachian remains to Louisiana Creole lines, carrying markers for hemophilia-like traits. Thirsts that could be sated only one way. The air grows thick with implication. If these real people were vessels for something eternal, then every shadow in every city hides a potential heir. The impaler's stake, the Countess's bath, the bayou's bite. They were not ends, but invitations. As the echoes fade, we stand at the precipice, reflecting on these lives that straddled the mortal coil and the monstrous. Vlad's Wallachia fell to time, his castle crumbling into myth-shrouded ruins where tourists now chase ghosts. Elizabeth's chambers sealed and silent guard secrets that time cannot fully erase. Her name a cautionary whisper in noble annals. New Orleans rebuilds, its nights alive with jazz, but the French Quarter's alleys still pulse with unspoken dread. The Mississippi carrying faint red-tinged currents to the sea. These stories resolve not in closure, but in lingering chill. The realization that history's monsters were ours, their hungers a mirror to our own hidden darknesses. Philosophers might call it the human condition, an eternal dance with the abyss, where the line between predator and prey blurs in the moonlight. Yet in the quiet hours, one question haunts above all. If vampires walked as real people once, who among us carries their blood today? In the shadows of the unknown, the mysteries endure. Stay curious, stay vigilant, for the night reveals what the day conceals.